why Sentry will be the most powerful character in the Marvel Universe. See what the damn nerd has to say about this and check this out.
Kevin Feige is bringing the Sentry to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the Sentry just happens to be one of the most overpowered characters ever put into comics. Just how powerful could he actually be, you ask? Well, that's actually one of the most highly debated topics from comic book fandoms from the past 20 years. Some people think the Sentry is actually a reality warping god, while others believe he's more like Superman on Yellow Sun steroid. In this video, we're going to begin by talking about a ton of feats that the Sentry has accomplished in Marvel Comics. And the last comic book feat that we're going to talk about is him literally beating the Molecule Man. It's insane and is still one of the most debated things that Marvel Comics has ever done. And then we're going to talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of the character. There's no way they can make him as crazy powerful as he is in the comic. And so we'll discuss, based on other characters that are in Marvel, how strong we think the Sentry will be in the MCU. Now, before we get into these absolutely ridiculous things that Sentry has done in comics, let's just talk about who Sentry is. Where does his power come from? What's the deal? Well, in comics, the Sentry is literally given a super soldier serum and just becomes something like Superman. And he is said to have the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, which is such a freaking Stan Lee Marvel Comics thing to do. But this is boasted by Sentry in different comic books. He has the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. But the truth is, even the most intelligent people in the Marvel Universe, like Reed Richards and Tony Stark, don't actually know why the Sentry is as powerful as he is, or where his powers come from. Even Owen Reese, the Molecule Man, is confused when encountering the Sentry, and the Molecule Man claims to have never experienced anything in this universe quite like the Sentry. And beyond that, the Sentry also has this sort of alter ego, this demonic demon-like thing known as the Void. And the Void is something like a demon that's created because of the power of the Sentry. And the Void wants nothing more than to take over the Sentry completely, becoming this unstoppable force of destruction. It's like Bruce Banner in the Hulk if Bruce Banner was a Superman-level powerful being and Hulk was a tendril having Lovecraftian demon-like thing. But okay, I'm sorry, that's already really nerdy, and we were just explaining what the heck the Sentry is. Now let's talk about the dope things the Sentry has done in the comics. So first up, there was a time when Terrax the Tamer, who at the time was a Herald of Galactus, had his axe stopped and shattered by the Sentry. Now, to put this in context, Terrax was a Herald of Galactus utilizing the power cosmic and already an incredibly powerful being himself. His crazy powerful axe can move at the speed of light. And despite all of that, Sentry basically grabbed his axe, broke it, and left him there crying like a little baby back bitch. And look at this face Sentry makes after doing it. He's literally just like, yeah, that's right, motherfucker. I'm the Sentry. Stay down there and cry about your broken axe. Sentry also once ripped Carnage in half, leaving Cletus Cassidy and the Carnage symbiote on their last life floating around space. This was at a time when Sentry was just chilling in a prison and he didn't want to use his powers anymore, he didn't want to cause any more harm, and then there was a breakout at the Raft. And all of these different villains were coming out, and essentially Carnage got out and started causing absolute havoc. Foggy Nelson was all like, hey, Sentry, please help us before Carnage shish bobs me. Sentry was like, okay, fine, I guess. Goes out there, grabs freaking Carnage, takes off into outer space, and then rips him in half. He ripped Carnage and Cletus Cassidy in half and left them to die. Sentry also took out a peak version of Loki during Siege, and this version of Loki was using these crazy weapons called the Norn Stones, which did actually have an effect on Sentry and the Void, and then that just ended up pissing him off, and Sentry and the Void exploded him right in front of Thor. Sentry once punched the moon in half. Somebody basically tricked him into thinking that the Void was hiding in the moon's core, and he literally just flies out there and punches the moon in half. He once beat himself, or rather, he beat Yelena Belova when she was the super adaptoid, and she took the powers of Sentry. And at first, she was kind of like whooping him because he's not used to fighting something as powerful as himself. But then he uses a psychic attack to come after Yelena's void that was created by her taking the powers of the Sentry. And this part was really cool because Sentry had to explain that in order to keep the void at bay, he has to be ultra controlling and be aware of his every movement and his every thought. And he's literally like able to project the void's terrifying aura into the psyche of Yelena. He once ripped Ares, the god of war, in half in front of everybody during the siege run. It's a super iconic panel, but this is Ares, the god of war. He's like on the level of Thor. He's a literal god. And Sentry, with basically very little effort, just grabbed him and ripped him in half, killing him. Sentry did the unthinkable during the World War Hulk event, and he actually stops the World Breaker Hulk rage. This is during a fight in Manhattan, and he basically just lets Hulk punch the shit out of him a couple of times, hits him with a couple of blows himself, and essentially stops Hulk. The fight is absolutely ridiculous, with the Hulk with infinite power, being stronger than he's ever been, going up against the Sentry, who's just unleashing all of his power. They are fighting to a standstill, and it's at that very moment, with Hulk there stuck in the fight, that the rest of the heroes are able to beam down the thing that basically changes Hulk back into Banner. And then later on, in a crazy story that took place in the negative zone, the Sentry, who had been taken over by the Void, literally broke every bone in the Hulk's body. One time when fighting the Avengers in a relatively recent comic book run, the Sentry rips his own head apart in order to launch some kind of a psychic attack on the Wasp. Dude, it was ridiculous. She's blasting him, and he basically says hurting this mortal body is useless. It's only flesh. And you realize that whatever the hell's going on with the Sentry is absurd, because he's immortal and can rip his own head apart and then just form it back. He also once fought the Blue Marvel to a standstill, and the Blue Marvel is another like god-level powerful Superman-esque character, and essentially nobody really stood a chance against Blue Marvel except for Sentry. But then, in the most controversial thing that Sentry has ever done, he literally beats the Molecule Man. Hey guys, look, I'm a huge fan of the Sentry. I'm probably gonna lean a little bit more into giving Sentry props for this feat, but this is a hotly debated comic book thing. There were all kinds of people that think that people went way too far in power scaling the Sentry after this happened, because Owen Reese at this time was depowered. He wasn't as powerful as he could have been, and essentially Owen Reese decimates Sentry, begins fighting against the Dark Avengers and Hammer, and is just obliterating everybody. And then all of a sudden, the freaking Sentry comes back, reforms himself, and causes all this insane pain to Owen Reese. And in fact, the Sentry says, unless you take all the things that just happened and set them back to normal, I'm going to kill you. And Owen Reese was terrified, confused, didn't understand how Sentry was beating him, and then just does what he says and turns everything back to normal. But then you have a conversation in which Sentry's talking to Norman Osborn and explaining that he can manipulate the molecules of his world. That's like his whole power. That's what gives him his power. And even a depowered Molecule Man is one of the strongest characters that Marvel's ever created, being able to fight the actual Beyonder to a standstill. So, I don't know, man. The Sentry's powers are pretty gosh damn ridiculous. In a lot of ways, that's kind of the whole point of the Sentry. The Sentry is just meant to be this unstoppable force, this unfathomable power. And there are even writers that have done this to Superman over at DC, giving him just insane powers that don't even really make sense, but Sentry has always been that guy. Like, he's incredibly, ridiculously powerful. But that brings us to the question of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it's very unlikely that Kevin Feige is going to introduce Sentry as a reality warping person. So let's talk about what we know about the Sentry coming into the MCU, and we can sort of speculate from there on how powerful we think they will make him. So as of right now, this character is going to be created by Val. He's going to be created via a super soldier serum, the Sentry Serum. And this will likely give him the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, which I hope is actually something they sort of riff on in the movie. And maybe some people think it's absolutely ridiculous, but then when they see his power, they're like, holy shit, 1,000,000 exploding suns. And as it goes, the Sentry is going to be a member of the team of the Thunderbolts initially in the film, but he's going to start to go crazy hearing the voices of the Void and ultimately snapping. And the big rumor is that Sentry and the Void will be the main villain of the Thunderbolts film. And so this being the MCU version of the Sentry, him just being created and not really having experience with the Void yet, he's not going to be anywhere near as powerful as Sentry becomes in a post-Siege Marvel Comics. Because learning more about the Void and learning how to control the Void is a part of what makes Sentry so powerful. But I do think Sentry being insanely powerful is a huge draw for the character, and when he is the Void, I do believe he's going to pose a threat that is greater than Thanos to planet Earth, and it's going to take every single superhero and supervillain on the planet to stop him. I think the closest character to Sentry that we currently have in the MCU is probably Carol Danvers when she is in her binary form. She's damn near invulnerable, she can fly through space, she flies through spaceships to destroy them, and she almost even beats Thanos until being knocked out with a punch using the Power Stone. But binary Carol Danvers is on a similar playing field to Thor. We've seen this in the What If comic when we had a variant of Thor fighting against the variant of binary Carol Danvers, and they kind of fight to a standstill. I mean, there are a lot of moments in that fight where Carol has the upper hand, but she doesn't just wipe the floor with Thor. Thor is strong enough to pose a serious challenge to her. And the way I'm currently thinking about the Sentry is that this is likely a dude that is so powerful that Thor teaming up with Captain Marvel would get beaten pretty handily. I feel like Sentry in the Void is going to be a character that is going to require the help of Red Hulk, of Bruce Banner, of Scar, of potentially Thor, of potentially Carol Danvers, and even then they might need the help of like Doctor Strange and Wanda. I think this dude is going to be that powerful. But I do think that's a little depowered from where he would be in the comics. I believe with a combined effort of a lot of powerful MCU characters, maybe like close to 9 or 10 of them, they will ultimately be able to overpower the Sentry. But that would put Sentry far above the power level of any character currently in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, maybe aside from Wanda during the events of Multiverse of Madness when she's tapped into the power of the Darkhold. And I can't freaking wait to see how they handle this character. I'm so excited, but it's also crazy because there are a lot of powerful characters coming to Marvel that will be on the level of Sentry. I mean, the Silver Surfer, Galactus, and of course the Beyonder Kang. These are all characters that could give the Sentry a run for his money. Smash like on this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel and our live streaming channel because we give away dope nerdy things to subscribers each month. And if you want to watch more, why not check out this video I recently made about how Kang could become the Beyonder in the MCU.
Yeah, please subscribe, like this video. And please like this video and see you guys. Bye.